Good morning. My name is Shashi Menon. I'm sitting in for Louise Russell, who had to go out of town to take care of some family business. But she'll be back. So the meeting is now called to order. And the first item on the agenda is a review of the minutes from the last meeting. If anybody has any comments, feedback, Rotten Tomatoes, anything like that. If not, will someone propose that the minutes be accepted?
I make motions.
Any seconding?
Second.
Meeting is, the minutes are accepted. As usual, we'll begin with the budget discussion. We will review the financial performance from previous month.
Well, just to update everybody on where things stand with the FY20 budget submission. Since our last meeting, I did meet with Kevin and Kristen and the town manager and assistant town manager. They went over our budget request. No changes that they were noting, at least during our meeting. So far so good. The capital budget request may have the portion that has the table and chair request taken out, which we'll get back down to when we get to the building oversight committee update. I can give an update on some things with the tables and chairs. But other than that, it looks like so far that our budget request will go through as submitted. So still waiting to hear what exactly our schedule will be for the finance committee. It'll be like it was last year, and we'll be going before them in March versus February. So it'll be one of those 2 Saturdays that they'll schedule in March. So as soon as we have dates, hopefully we'll have something maybe by next week's workshop, and that way we can tell them what our preference would be. What consensus everybody would have as far as who will be, what meeting would get the most number of folks there. So
we do not yet have a tentative date for the hearing?
No.
Which Saturdays are you talking about in March? What would the first or the second Saturday?
I believe that's what it was last year.
I forgot.
Because when it used to be in February, they were
Yeah.
the first and second Saturdays of February. So I believe last year we did the first and second Saturdays of March. But again, I should know more when we meet next week for the workshop.
So we're gonna get the tables and chairs, but not through this budget. It's gonna be through what is it gonna come through?
The public buildings
Public
budget.
buildings, all right.
So it'll just be shifted out of our budget and into theirs if it all comes together. Or we might still get additional tables and chairs. So we're gonna have to tweak that depending on what we decide as far as how many we need. And if the friends can contribute and all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about that? If not, we can move on to the review of the financial reports. I believe everyone has these spreadsheets on your computer or hard copy somewhere. Not really. Give me a hard copy, did you?
I didn't. Sorry.
We have some stuff there yet. What was it?
You should have. So
That?
there's that. That's the gift account.
Okay. Now, in connection with these financial reports, I had a discussion with Sharon, and it seems to me that what the information we really need is not just the raw numbers. We really need to know the deltas. Are we getting better? Are we losing money? Are we spending too much? Are we spending too little? How do we stand in relation to last year or last month? So I'm suggesting that later on Sharon will be talking about staff, the new staff, and one of the things I think that we ought to consider is the new person will generate a spreadsheet and put in the appropriate formulas to show the deltas. So you don't have to sit there manually recalculating what the deltas are for the last month, for the last week, the last month, and previous months, or for the year. Yes?
Oh,
But
that's-
further down the line. But the other question I had was, is this information available to the public? I mean, to the seniors? Is this available to them?
Right now, I mean, if somebody came to the office and asked for it, it's public information, so we'd make it available.
All right.
But right now, it's not posted on the website or anything like that.
Okay, so my recommendation is that we should publicize that. We should let the seniors know that the financial information is available. They have to ask for it at the desk, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
and like I said, I can also check about
Sure.
seeing if we could keep it online.
okay. Oh, somebody has to come in, yeah, online would be ideal, but for right now, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people still don't use the computer, which is another one of my pet peeves. But that being said, if you can have a hard copy, just one hard copy or maybe two at the desk, and somebody who's from some member of our population or senior population, I want to see the financial, they should be able to go and get it.
I think makes a lot of sense.
I'm sorry?
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes. So go ahead.
I was gonna say what we might be able to do, but I don't know how helpful it would be if somebody wants a quick reference. I was gonna say the materials that you get each month, I could probably scan in and attach with the minutes, because that's one of the things we have on our list of things to do when we get fully staffed again, is to get all the minutes up to date on the website. So all the attachments could be attached to the minutes.
It's a great idea.
But I don't know how helpful that would be if somebody was trying to quickly reference, I'd like to make a contribution to the gift account, I wonder how that looks or whatever. They would have to kind of dig through minutes to find it. So it might be worth me talking to IT to see if there's a place in the public records that things like that could be posted.
Could you put them, the way you send them to us where they're actually separate
Slow down,
records?
slow down.
If you were to attach them and make them as separate attachments, so you have the minutes with separate attachments, you'd then be able to open each of the attachments.
Yeah,
Or is that taking too much space?
I don't know.
I do not believe that space is an issue, but the real issue is in order to get the material onto the website, you have to be knowledgeable in Civic Plus. Civic Plus is the company that hosts our websites, all our websites. If you notice, all the websites have a certain format. That format is across the board for everyone. And there's a specific, I wouldn't call it a programming language, but there are a bunch of things that you have to do to be able to get and make changes. In other words, there are things that are etched permanently, which we cannot change, but there's data areas that we can change, but you must have access to it, and you must have a little bit of training in getting on board and using Civic Plus. If you look at the emails that you get from the town, you notice that little C with a little P next to it? Have you noticed that little red and black symbol?
I haven't gotten anything from the town.
No, you get things like even notifications of the garbage pickup delays or anything like that.
No, I
Have you
don't.
never signed up for any of those
No.
newsletters?
No.
Yeah, they'll tell you if there's closures because of bad weather, they'll tell you if there's a,
But you also can get alerts on your phone, so I don't.
they will tell you when garbage is delayed, recycling is delayed, they'll tell you whatever. All that information is on the web, but you can also go on to the town website and sign up for a email alert. The town will automatically send you an email when there are changes, and you will notice those emails will always have the C with the red and black CP on it. That stands for Civic Plus, which is the name of the company that actually does the work.
I get a telephone call for all that.
Oh yeah, sure. You can do that too. You can sign up for the phone
I
calls.
know.
Yeah. Someday you'll be using the web, right?
Well, right, but if you got a text alert, that's
Yes.
faster than.
I have one comment about putting the gift account on a website. I would prefer to see it just available in a hard copy here. I think you might be opening a Pandora's box, putting the gift account amounts. People can be funny about money. And if they think you have a couple of extra thousand that you don't need, that they might be able to use, I think you're gonna get more
Yes.
comments than you're thinking of.
That is a valid point,
As well as the memorial donations,
yes.
you know,
So perhaps what we should do is just have a hard copy available and just let the
Yeah.
people know that if they're really interested,
Yeah.
they can go to the front desk and ask for a copy of,
Well, when that is available in hard copy, a little blurb in the newsletter should be sufficient.
yes. I agree. Not only that, items that are sensitive, like the gift account, perhaps we should, because of privacy issues, perhaps we should, they may need to be edited. You know, memorials, donations and things like that.
or an outreach pay, something
Outreach
that's been
payment,
paid for
Yeah,
an
I mean,
outreach
we may
person in
need-
You have
need.
to
may
be
need to-
careful about
Yes,
some
yes,
things.
something
Yeah.
that's made available. Or perhaps gift account is an exception.
Do we need to
The
put the
others may be
names in
okay.
it?
I'm
We
sorry?
don't need to put the names in there of the donors.
Right. I mean, what I had in mind was just this report that we see here, which doesn't have any names or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
But you're right, it does have the amounts, and you don't want to,
Right,
people to look at it and say, oh, why do you have all this?
right.
Well, we do put, the last
we do,
name for
yeah.
memorial
Yeah.
currently,
You
just
have-
to
yeah.
track them.
Yeah.
So
But
we-
like you
we-
said,
we
it could
may-
be
yeah.
edited.
Yes, we may need to edit it before we made it, but that won't happen till we have the new staff available.
And one thing that Louise had emailed me that she thought might be helpful, which we had talked about the gift account with those 4 categories, having the gift account amounts be listed by category as far as when a donation comes in, what category are we assigning it to, and if we make an expenditure, under which of those 4 categories is it being expended. So I'm still working on what those totals would be based on what we had talked about as far as how far we should go back to determine what those starting amounts should be. And so again, I'll be doing that with the new person that comes on board. But I was thinking, as far as how that could look, maybe just having 4 columns and then having at the bottom some type of total deposits or expenditures. I mean, again, we don't get a lot each month, so I don't think there'd be a lot of change. But when Shashi brought this up to me, when he was saying about, the changes month to month or comparisons to the year, one of the things we were saying is it easier to read in a spreadsheet type of format, or should it be in a narrative, like a 1-page summary breaking down our 4 main accounts, the formula, the gift, towns, and the revolving account, what would be easier? And then when the new person comes on board, we can set up some type of running monthly report accordingly, based on whatever anybody thinks is the
Well,
most
we may need
helpful.
to try a couple of different things and see what works.
And also, if this is available in a hard copy, I think people will probably forget what the monies in a gift account is used for. I mean, you say, okay, here's the gift account.
Which is going to be my next question. For the gift fund, we talked about review and act on guidelines. Now, have we invoked the new guidelines and spent any money at all?
We do have one case, we haven't paid the bill yet, but there was one case that Walter worked with last month that we did take money out of the gift account toward for somebody in need that had a heating issue but didn't qualify for fuel assistance.
Okay.
So
Any other questions about the gift account? If not, formula grant? Formula grant.
you don't have a spreadsheet on that. I'm still working on breaking down those totals, and with the staff change, that's gonna make the funds that we had listed in that breakdown change a little bit. So I'll be tweaking that and showing what that amount will be with the difference that we'll have in funds from, whatever gap we end up having from Miranda's leaving until a new person comes on board. And then we can talk about how we think those funds should be expended. Because obviously with the formula allocation, that all has to be spent by June 30th. So now where we have an additional amount that we'll be working with, we'll need to figure out either bumping up some of the other categories or spending it on something different entirely. But I want to get that amount for you, what we anticipate we're looking at. So even though, the formula is a little different than the town's staff funding in that we have flexibility, we can spend it on whatever the formula allocation has approved. So it doesn't have to be spent on personnel, whereas the town account is broken down, personnel can only be spent on personnel, operating can only be spent on operating. But for the formula, we have flexibility. So because we allocated that amount for personnel, it doesn't have to be spent, that difference doesn't have to be spent on personnel. It can go towards another, anything that the state has approved as being okay. So again, circling back to the building oversight stuff, we may want to use those funds to buy tables and chairs now and not have to put it into that capital, pull it out, withdraw it from that capital request. I'm not sure. So again, that'll be forthcoming for us to discuss.
All right. Any other questions on the financial reports? If not, we can move on to the next item, which is to review and act on standing items. The survey update, we have the narrative which you all received this morning. And I don't expect that we'll be reading it here, but it's been reviewed by Kristen, right?
Yes, and Louise already found a few typos, so she sent some things for us to correct. So I know Norma's got the proofreading eyes from being on the newsletter committee, so again, any typos you might catch, that would be helpful. So the more eyes on it, the better, not just with the narrative, but the data as well. Mm-hmm. If something doesn't look right or isn't adding up, I can go back and double check it so that we can make sure it's accurate.
Regarding the survey, I have a question. Is there plans to put this into a database? Something that can be queried?
That's, I think, what our hope is, because right now it's strictly just tallied.
Yeah, just tallies.
You can't interact with it and say how many men said that they were interested in playing pickleball or something, for example. Right now you can't do that. John Covey did send out an email to the department heads that there's possibly going to be some interns available for some projects. So I believe he had talked to you about that anyway. Mm-hmm. So that might be something that we can group as an assignment to an intern.
Well, this new person, that staff going to be on your staff, is he or she going to have some knowledge of databases and for instance, if you were to use Microsoft Access even, if you can do that, that would be adequate for us, I think. So is that going to be in your job description?
We have in the job description management of databases in regard to maintaining the newsletter mailing list mm-hmm. and data of participants through my senior center database. The Access database is what got very confusing back when we tried to query survey data back in 2002. So I think we'd probably want to explore what other types of databases could be available other than Access, because everybody had a hard time with it, including IT. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what might be more user-friendly that we could use queries with. I know, hopefully we're not going to get closed captioning errors, but I know Virginia had suggested maybe now that we have the data, is there a way that it can be entered into SurveyMonkey, because SurveyMonkey does have that querying option. Even if we had to pay a fee or something for it, it might be worth it to have that query data, and now it would just be somebody inputting it versus respondents entering their responses into SurveyMonkey. So I think that might be something that we could discuss with IT as well. Cause I think that's a more user-friendly interface that could probably be queried easier than trying to set something up through Access.
Are there any, does the town use SurveyMonkey at all?
I know the school department
schools do.
has
Yeah.
used,
Yes, because
for
it's
a
an easier,
yeah, as a survey tool.
Yeah.
So we could draw on the expertise, somebody who knows how to do this and how to, you know, I know nothing about the interface with SurveyMonkey.
Yeah,
I think what might also be interesting, if it's possible at all, because we're doing this in a project I'm working on for my China, is we were able to hoping to get 2 IT students. Of course, we're getting them from a local college. And actually what we're asking them to do is do an analysis on the information without saying anything to them. We're just asking them to analyze it. Because we want them to look at it very freshly and tell us what they see as identify what they see as trends. Because sometimes if you tell somebody what to look for and that's all they look for, and you're missing something. Whereas someone coming in with fresh eyes might say, might just discover things that you're not looking for. Especially if you're looking to use this data to determine, where you want to be with the senior center 10, 20 years from now. And again, if you're going through the process of actually surveying, which means you don't want to use your own preconceived notions, you just have to almost open it out of the box and have someone look at it who knows nothing. Yeah, I mean, then you need someone to come back afterward to look at it and maybe go back and query more. But fresh eyes sometimes can discover things that we can't discover ourselves.
Sure.
Just the way we read things as adults and we miss all the typos.
Right.
Well, I can, seeing I have to contact somebody through the school department anyway, I can try to see what I can find out as far as who does that through the school department, as far as, is it their own IT people or is it somebody over in the business office? And see what I can find out.
Okay, sounds good. You, Barbara, you have that, right? That's an action item that needs to be recorded, all right.
Yeah.
All right, so we're done with financial reports for now? I think we
I
are.
think so, yeah.
We're on to the survey update, strategic plan, that we have a workshop scheduled for the 15th, which is next Tuesday. What time is that, 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
here,
no, it
in
will
the
have
selectmen's
to,
conference room?
yes, cause we have the dementia support group happening. Here we
It's
go.
over.
Yes,
Okay.
yep. Hopefully we won't have snow
Yeah.
like we did last time
Okay.
trying to walk over.
As far as the strategic plan update goes, we have an open meeting with the public scheduled for January 31st.
26th?
I'm sorry?
It says 31st here.
31st? January 31st, right?
Okay.
And is in the evening?
I'm sorry?
We're doing 2 sessions.
2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, 2 o'clock and 6 o'clock.
No, 6 o'clock is, yeah, one is, I'm sorry, you're right. One at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and one at 6 o'clock in the evening.
And that's the 31st.
Correct. Now, what is not clear to me is Kristen planning to do a presentation? Or is this going to be something that the public is going to provide comments on? We don't know exactly the format of the discussions yet.
I think she'll be going over that with us at the
on next
workshop on
week, yes.
Tuesday. But it's my understanding it would hopefully be both of those things, that she would be giving a presentation and then be asking for input as well. When the current events group met in here on Monday, that they asked if I could come in and speak at the end of their meeting regarding this. And they were very excited and they're all eager to hear what's in the plan and they're hoping to attend. So hopefully we can put it out there to all the different groups and users at the senior center, and hopefully we'll have a good turnout. So,
Good.
and hopefully we'll get good feedback.
Okay? Now, the next section is to act on program service activity updates, transportation. Well, we have the new van, but are we still processing van driver applications? Is that where we are?
Well, a few different things on that. We are processing driver applications, so we'll be starting interviews on that next week. We have a whole bunch of candidates, so now that we have an HR department, that made things much easier to do. So the amount of work involved with our office was minimal, so that was a nice change. But it does look like we have some quality candidates to choose from, so we should be bringing a new van driver on board and then have a pool to work with when the new van comes on board. The contract, we did get a call from the DOT that the contract is in process for the new van contract as well as the operating contract. So I said, well, what about the contract that we still need to get paid on? And she said, well, we're kind of doing both simultaneously, but at this point we want to hurry up and get the new contract processed. So she said, well, it might be confusing because you technically might be getting new money before you get the old money, but you will get all the money. So, okay. I wanted to say, can I record this conversation? So things are coming together with that. We still don't have an estimated time of when the van will be delivered. I'm guessing probably still not until fall, based on the timelines.
That was my question, when
Yeah.
are we gonna get it? Okay.
Yeah. And that's just kind of a guesstimate based on how things worked the last time. But again, just based on how things are working funding wise, who knows? But because it's coming from a different funding source under the Department of Transportation, we'll see.
It would be nice if somebody could give us a VIN number of the new vehicle. Then we know that it's real. But right now, it's just wishful thinking. I mean, in the old days, when you ordered a car, as soon as you got the VIN ID, you said, this is going to be your car, you could call them up and find out where do we stand.
Yeah.
But you can't do that anymore. Anyway, anything else? I have a question about the driver's survey report. Is someone generating a narrative of summary of findings?
Yes, and I'm sorry that that's taking so long. I actually asked one of the van drivers to help me wrap that up. Pat Babin, I think most of you know her, helped make sure that everybody, kind of submitted their information. So she's the one that is helping me wrap that up. Mm-hmm. So again, hopefully I'll get that to you very soon.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on that? Outreach. Did we get Walter's report? Oh, yes, we did. Here again, if you look at the last column, you can kind of see the trend, but it would be good to know what all these things mean, so perhaps a narrative would be helpful. But again, this is something that needs to be addressed when we have the new people on board.
Well, the biggest thing to note this month is Walter did hit a new high this month. It's only slightly higher than it was in September, but he did hit a new high of walk-ins. So if you see, he had 38 people that just walked in. And I know in our strategic planning, when we're talking about outreach, one of the things that he feels that this shows strongly, particularly when you compare it to last year's numbers, when you see how many people walked in versus what we've got so far this fiscal year, it's not unreasonable for people expecting to come to the senior center and that the outreach coordinator will be available. We have a lot more people that show up on the days Walter's not here, and we have to tell them, the days that Walter will be in, or if they want to leave a message, and then he follows up and schedules something. So that walk-in figure is just the people that show up when he's here that he's able to document. So technically the people that just show up for outreach services is much larger even than what's shown here. So again, as we continue our talks for our strategic planning, where outreach is something I think we've been talking about taking to the next step over the next 5 years, I think that's probably a key thing we'll want to talk about.
In the newsletter, did you indicate the hours that you have outreach available, if someone's reading it, so that they would know? It's like any service, I mean, some services are not always available, so if you're, so to just walk in sometimes, you may not have somebody there.
Also on the Shrewsbury cable, if we have the announcement saying that these are the times and you're requested to make an appointment before coming to visit.
Yeah.
What's the latest status on increasing Walter's hours?
Right now, we don't have anything in the works. I think we've been figuring, it would be something we'd be discussing in the strategic plan. The big push for, this current budget was, adding that third full-time, making sure that the additional person coming on board was gonna be full-time.
So when we meet with the finance committee, that's gonna be one of the big questions, one of the big requests, or?
Well, not for this budget cycle, but I think it probably wouldn't hurt to make them aware that this is on the horizon, that it's something we're gonna be continuing to develop and, be aware that it's something we'll be likely requesting in the
I
future.
mean, it just seems that it's been put off and put off and put off and put off, and it's such a need.
It looks like we're moving into crisis territory here. I'm just looking because I've got this on here rather than on paper. I can go back to
Correct.
fiscal year 16 and look just the number of contacts. December in fiscal year 16 there were 25. Fiscal year 17 there were 36. Fiscal year 18 there were 53. This year 115.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're
This-
just putting,
Yeah.
How long can we continue
Well, that's it.
to have effective outreach services with one part-time person?
I mean, this is a need now, not 2 years from now.
What does he work, 20 hours? 24?
Well, 18,
18.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And is there a way to compare this size community with other senior centers and the amount of outreach that they offer?
Yes, and even the surrounding towns that are smaller, most of them have full-time outreach folks.
I thought this was one of the requests, I forget what the term is, that when you're requesting something further than what has actually been approved, the town manager, what was the title that it went under?
Last year, we had what they called enhancement
Right,
requests.
that's,
That if
right.
they
I thought this
were
was
able
one of
to-
the enhancements that was gonna be asked for,
last year, we had that listed.
right?
This year, it wasn't set up that way. There was no enhancement items.
And
Well, I don't know,
why not, or
there's
why,
gotta be some
why
way.
should it?
Please, I think that this topic of outreach is bigger than this meeting.
Yes,
I think we need to have a separate meeting about that. We need to consider the following. First of all, many religious institutions in this area, I'm sure, provide some kind of, St. Anne's, for instance, does provide some outreach services. Not completely, but they do provide some. Do we need to coordinate with them? Don't know. The other thing is, it occurred to me that I was looking at this spike of 38, and I'm saying, most people do not go to outreach until there's a crisis. Nobody likes to go to outreach and ask for help. Nobody likes to ask for help. So we need to approach, okay, there's the issue of not just a question of funding. The question is, how do we communicate what services are available? How do we get the right people, to talk to? How do we get the information out and tell people where they can go and how do you do this? All that has to be worked out, maybe beyond this meeting. The other thing is, question for you is, do we need to revisit our budget and see if the budget that we have now for outreach is adequate? Or do you think it's adequate? We don't know. Go ahead.
Some of the things that you mentioned that people might not be aware of what outreach is all about, in the newsletter,
Yes,
Walter has a column,
yes,
and it actually tells the different things that
Yes.
outreach is and what he does.
see, I agree with you, but like I said, people don't reach out and go looking for help until they're desperate. And if it is somebody who doesn't come to the senior center, like there are people out here who are working and can't make ends meet, they're not even going to read the newsletter. See, another problem is with the newsletter itself, that it's so compact, a lot of people may just skip right over it. So
Well,
there are a
like-
lot
well,
of
like
issues
anything else.
involved. Go ahead.
So, just a couple of things. I've actually been to St. Anne's. I worked in another company where we actually used to do things for them because of free services. So they actually reach out to entire communities. So it's a wide range of individuals and age groups that they're serving. Certainly because they're part of Shrewsbury, it might not be a bad idea to connect with them.
Mhm.
But again, being faith-based, some people might not want to do that.
Sure.
But I think if your goal here is to make the senior center more attractive and more user-friendly to your community, you should be expanding your outreach services. And there's certainly no reason why on the cable station or something else that you can't also let the community members know what the service does, because certainly on those cable stations, I mean, that just re-wraps numerous times. So if part of this goal is, or your focus right now is to reach out to the community, maybe hit those 50s and 60-year-olds who might be struggling.
Right.
Then look at, that's an appropriate topic, an appropriate thing to be looking at.
Sharon, 2 years ago, the town manager had talked about a full-time and a part-time job.
Yes.
What happened to those?
I know, that's what and at that time, he was saying, well, you have to request it under the enhancement, but he really led us to believe
That we're
that,
getting it soon.
right, that there was no problem. Remember?
Well, basically when I say they, the town manager, the assistant town manager, in talking with us and the big picture, working on the strategic plan and so on, looking at the needs of the department, it was felt that we needed to bring the office staff back up to, having 3 full-time people to be able to support our functions first. But I think that's something that would probably still be supported, but whether or not we could effectively double our full-time staff in 1 year, I don't know that, there would be support for that. Because the big thing is jumping from, because the part-time has to be 18 hours or less. Anything over 18, then they have to prorate benefits. So basically it's the issue of having a benefited position versus a non-benefited position. So, so far we're making the jump of finally getting a 3rd full-time position reinstated in the office. But obviously that's been a big wish list for a long time. So I think that was one of the big things the town manager had to look at and weigh was, both of these are equally important, but which one should be done first? And I think I'd hate to put words in his mouth, but the feeling I got from him was if we were to make outreach full-time, it wouldn't really help matters if we still didn't have the support in the office to help support outreach, transportation, and all the things we do in the office. So trying to prioritize what should be done first, I think that was his line of thinking, was restoring our staffing back to what it was before we build out further.
Let me ask you a question. Our discussions so far lead me to believe that it's almost as though we need a plan in place for outreach. Because as the population grows, the demand is going to grow, and the what I'm looking for is, the demographics are changing.
Aging
And, you know, there's extremes of, you know, there's some, because of the development and all that.
Right.
So we gotta have a plan in place, how to deal with outreach. I mean, the fact that we're underfunded or understaffed is just, you know, part of the problem. We don't have an overall approach to outreach, that we need that.
Just a comment that, again, in my job, because I do get out to a lot of other senior centers, many of the senior centers I interact with, the outreach person is very proactive in the community in terms of what the programs are that are going on. So I know in one community, they were working with the farmers market for SNAP, and helping individuals, you know, use SNAP dollars, because that's a big thing, especially when you're talking in the communities of individuals that may have limited funds, and there's such a big push on healthy eating, that if you have a farmer's market, that's an optimal way to get fresh vegetables for whatever time frame it's going. But to use SNAP dollars is a big thing right now in terms of how you accomplish that.
Mhm.
Some of the outreach is working on developing those kinds of programs, but that's very hard for someone to do at 18 hours.
And,
Well, that was
that's-
available here, though.
Yep,
You have to-
and Walter
I know, I
says,
understand
they
that, but
were.
I'm just talking in a general.
One meeting,
sorry,
please.
sorry. I'm talking in a general way in terms of how that role is perceived, and what that role is doing. So I'm not negating that you may be doing something already, the question is, what more can that role do that will demonstrate how important it is?
So does this have to be an action item? Is this something that we should be scheduling for a discussion later on? I mean,
well, I
is there
think a
gonna
lot
be-
of that, again, falls back under the strategic plan. You know, what are some of the things you want to see happening in the next 5 years in regards to, I think outreach kind of covers all of the goals we've already set, so specifying what some of those outreach goals would be. But just very quickly, to kind of answer a few of the different things that have been brought up. Walter does take part in an interfaith, Shrewsbury has a very active, Cliff probably knows this, very active interfaith community that meets on a regular basis, and he attends those meetings to make them aware of different issues that are happening in the community, and to also get feedback on what limitations the different faith communities might have and how the town might be able to help. The small home repair program actually grew out of that, because one of the churches had started a repair program for parishioners and wanted to branch out and help other faith communities, and then it kind of got so large nobody was really able to coordinate that, and then that's how that started. You know, it kind of navigated over here to the senior center, and now we coordinate that through Walter. So that was a huge thing that came out of that interfaith community. And then we do have quarterly community partnership meetings that grew out of the triad, because where we have a very active triad that, again, Walter organized, that meets weekly, there were so many different people that wanted to take part in that it became easier just to hold it quarterly, and the faith communities invited all the different departments, all the different agencies in town, and we usually have a rep from St. Anne's at those meetings. So I think there's no doubt that Walter makes very effective use of those 18 hours. We're very fortunate that because of all of his experience, like you said in the past, because of the individual we have in outreach, we are very fortunate we get a lot of bang for our buck. But I think, you know, Walter was actually just joking with our HR person yesterday that, you know, one of his bucket list items is he wants to go skydiving. And I said, before or after you retire, don't leave us hanging here. But you know, I don't think he minds me sharing that he's going to be 78 this year. So obviously doesn't plan on retiring anytime soon, because obviously with 2 staff folks leaving, a lot of people have said, Walter, are you going to be leaving so too? And he said, no, don't put that out there. I don't want people getting confused and thinking that I'm leaving too. But obviously I think at some point he probably wants to, enjoy and do more skydiving and ziplining. And then at that point, I think if we haven't been proactive, we'll truly have a real crisis, because then how would that work? We certainly would not be able to replicate what he's been able to do in 18 hours with another person. There's some of institutional knowledge that just comes with the person that we've got in that position, that we've been able to get by with the 18 hours, that I definitely hear what you're saying, that, where is that tipping point where we do dip into crisis mode? And I think if unfortunately for whatever reason Walter pulled out of that picture, we would be there. I think we all agree to that. So again, I think that's all part of what we need to talk about in our strategic plan, is looking at that piece too. And it'll be good to get that feedback from the public when we have that public hearing, because hopefully that's something the public's been thinking about too, is what services do they know about. I think in the survey data, you'll see a lot of people, things that we put in the newsletter all the time, people didn't know about.
Yeah.
But yet they checked that they read the newsletter, or they were aware of the newsletter. But
It
not-
didn't make sense, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to get that feedback.
So, the full-time person that you're hoping to get, would you attach that person along with Walter to be as an understudy?
No, what we have in the budget that we're trying to hire now, that would be in this fiscal year, would be a combination admin assistant and volunteer coordinator. So it would be a full-time person that would be doing volunteer coordination, as well as being an admin assistant that would be doing all the payroll functions, the bill paying, taking over all the accounting things that we used to have a full-time
So
person doing.
nothing not associated with Walter at all?
No, you see,
No, it's-
we need to get, this new person has to do what Stacy's doing now, plus
Miranda.
I'm hoping this person will be able to update and maintain our town website that has not been updated in God knows when, and also maintain the spreadsheet and write the formulas that show you the deltas and generate the reports. All that will be done by this one person. Walter, I think, needs a full-time almost. I would say he needs help. He needs an understudy.
And
Not
that
only,
needs to-
not only just to help him, but almost like, take his place someday. Go ahead.
And it needs to be a social worker, and it's a whole different skill
Right,
set and
right,
training,
absolutely.
training.
Absolutely, social working,
background.
definitely. Has to be a trained social worker almost.
And Walter had said more than once that if it wasn't a full-time position when he retired, that you would not attract the kind of person that you really need.
Exactly.
We've been very lucky. We have a very unique situation in that we've had him to fill that
Right.
role the way that we have. It's really helped keep us afloat here and avoid being in crisis. But again, trying to look 5 years ahead and taking whatever plans he has in the next 5 years into account, what we'd like to see happen as far as growth in the next 5 years, definitely is all going to be something we want to keep on the public's radar.
Well, that's why I had said I was hoping when we came before the finance committee, that I know it's too late for this fiscal year, but I would really like to see a full-time position for outreach in the next fiscal year, rather than put off.
Do we have it in our budget for a full-time position?
For the admin volunteer coordinator,
Not for outreach.
correct.
See what I'm saying? It just gets pushed off and pushed off.
And what is the reason why we didn't put it?
Again, because we would have been doubling our full-time staff if we had requested both positions.
But now, all right, we're talking about this fiscal year, you're getting, you know, those positions. So to me, I don't see why we can't ask for the next fiscal year for the outreach. I mean, really, you look at all the surrounding towns, smaller ones even, they have full outreach. I mean, just because we're so fortunate that Walter does what he does, doesn't mean that we shouldn't get it full time.
I mean, the data here indicates
Yeah.
the growing need, and we have to acknowledge that.
Well,
Yeah.
I've
Anyway,
said my
one-
piece.
In 1 month over a year, it's more than double.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
more than doubled the contacts.
Would this be something that we could present at the finance meeting?
We should certainly bring it up, I think.
We need to make people aware of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah,
because if we don't kind of start making noise
Exactly.
about it,
Exactly.
yeah.
And if we are just silent about it, they'll think it's okay.
Yes.
Well, and it might not hurt to talk about it at next week's workshop too.
Next week, we should bring it up.
Well, that's what I was thinking, yeah,
If-
yeah.
If there is anything that can be done sooner, or if there is an opportune window that, you know, maybe Kristen could help guide us as to how we
See,
would do
Well, I
that.
mean,
my reading of this data is that there's something growing here, something festering here, that we can't just paper over.
Yeah.
It's only going to get worse,
Yeah.
not get better, get better.
We've got to be the squeaky wheel.
Yes. All right, any other discussion, anything we need to discuss about outreach per se? We have one more item here, the Memory Lane Cafe and the Dementia Friendly Grant. Do we need to, other than the numbers, do we?
Just as far as dementia friendly, I think I had briefly spoke last month that we're partnering with the residents at Orchard Grove to do that instructional piece that we've been talking about will be our focus for the second year. So they'll be starting with training emergency responders first, so police, fire, and EMS, and then we'll be moving out to the businesses. So we'll be developing the Dementia Friendly America program, which is the model that we're using, has
Excuse me.
Yep.
You said we will be developing. Who's the we?
well, we have our Dementia Friendly Action Team. So
They are going to write something up?
well, we have a Dementia Friendly America packet that we've been using as our guide, and they have a little sticker to put on the windows of businesses. I'm sure Virginia's probably seen it in her travels, for community businesses and so on that have
Right.
gone through the training and become officially dementia friendly.
Lunenburg is working on this, and I thought that there was actually just I thought you can actually do the training online, so that you don't have to have so that you can actually do things at your own pace. So if you're working in your, I mean, I know with the Lunenburg group, we had a representative from the police department, and he actually had already done the online training. And so he wanted to explain to everybody that it wasn't going to take that long, it wasn't that complex, but it was important. And yes, you're putting a decal on your door, and it's really convincing individuals that by indicating you're dementia friendly doesn't suddenly mean that all you do is treat a select group of people. The idea really is that as part of the dementia friendly community, you are dementia friendly.
Correct. Yeah. I'm not aware of the online portion. I'll definitely look into that and see. But the training definitely isn't long. It should only be a half hour or
Yes.
so.
I think that's why the online training exists, because it simply means that if you wanted to do it at your own pace or at home, you could just do it online.
So, let me understand this. Your dementia-friendly group that we have, what are they going to do? They're going to update what?
Well, basically, they're applying the Dementia Friendly America materials to Shrewsbury, making them, specific to Shrewsbury.
Now, is there some mechanism by which we find out what they're doing?
As far as seeing the materials?
Yeah, the
or-
material update, where would all that be? I mean, this is all,
Yeah, I could,
Do you attend the meetings?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So, I know we've talked before about the dementia-friendly brochure that they've been working on versus a folder. I think I had told everybody about that. So that should be very ready soon, and I'll have that, well, you'll all get copies of that anyways, but I'll be showing you the proof of that too before that goes to print. And that's what the first responders will have available to give out to anybody that might be in crisis and so on, to list, the different resources that are available to them through Elder Services, through the Alzheimer's Association, what we have here at the Senior Center and so on.
See, it seems to me that there's a little bit of an overlap between what the dementia-friendly people are doing and the outreach people are doing. Because we do have elders who are living alone, and as they get along in years, their memory lapse and things like that, they should be somehow brought into the outreach.
Well, the dementia-friendly initiative came out of the outreach community partnership that met quarterly. That was one of the issues that came up, was how to deal with the folks that have dementia in the community. So
I will say that I know from our own perspective, being a hospital, we are in a community where we have 2 assisted living facilities, and if you have an individual who comes in at 6 o'clock at night, who's from a memory unit, and they've injured themselves, and you ask them questions, you have to really know how to ask questions, because the person that brings them is not a caregiver. If there's somebody that's there, they can't speak for them. So this is a really important endeavor to make sure that you are able to communicate properly and understand, what the person's dealing with that you're talking to.
Okay.
Well, we part of our plan is to have all of you go through the training too.
Mhm.
So you'll not only get to see everything that you'll go through it yourselves. So
Well, to me, it's a question of getting the information out.
Right.
So people know what's going on and where to go for help. Recognize symptoms of dementia or the early stages of whatever, and what to do about it.
Right, but being dementia friendly also means that it's how you interact. Think of it as another layer of customer service training.
That's right, that's right.
yeah.
All right.
And usually I defer to Cliff for the Memory Cafe updates.
Yeah, although I haven't actually been to the last couple of them, but I think there's we've had a couple of sparse attended events, but by and large there seems to be a building going on of the attendance, and word gets out. I think the most effective is word of mouth. People hear about it from friends and others who are.
Do you connect with other memory cafes so that they know your schedule, and because I think a lot of people are encouraged to attend more than one.
Yep. Yeah,
Well,
there
we
has
alternate
been
with the
some.
library, right?
Yes, we alternate with the library.
There's a whole calendar for the region, and we're on both this location and the library are now on that calendar.
No, but I meant even if there's the Worcester, maybe not the Worcester Senior Center, West Boylston, something that's close to you, because I know when I had attended the one in Lunenburg, there were individuals who were there who attended other places.
That's right.
And this gave them the
Excuse me.
option of coming to something more than once a month.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, Mary's been doing a mailing every month with a flyer to the surrounding memory cafes, the churches. I'm trying to think who else is on that list.
I think what's very interesting about going to these, again, I'm not too sure what you've been seeing so far, but because I had attended the Lunenburg sessions on the dementia friendly, one of the members from the Memory Cafe wanted to join us to listen to what the program was and what they were doing, and if there are going to be decals or something that were being used or something, what would be appropriate. Since I'm not going to say her name, I was amazed. This woman is 61 years old. And so I think when you go to something, you're beginning to realize that it's not, you're not dealing with people who are necessarily 85 years old. There's a range of 50 up.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting when you're talking about dementia friendly to realize that we might feel a little bit differently if someone walks in that we feel is older. We might feel more appropriate in how we interact with them. Not realize that someone could be 50 and not necessarily able to follow your discussion.
Yep.
So I think that's important when you're looking at dementia friendly.
Now, the Memory Lane Cafe report, is that something that you would do, or is this something, is there?
That's what we're talking about.
I know, but is there a physical report?
Oh,
Oh, you just did the report, that was it?
yeah, that was
Okay.
it, that was it.
I'm surprised that more people aren't attending the Memory Cafe here, especially the fact that they're offering a meal also, a free meal in addition to socializing and entertaining. I'm really
It
amazed
just-
that more people aren't
It just
attending.
takes time. The history of these, as you go around, and Mary's
Yeah.
been in touch with people at other cafes, they tend to start slow and they build over time. And so this is only a few months old.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I think there was about a dozen people at the last one, so
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
that's good.
really good. And this coming one, I mean, just a plug in case anybody wants to hear, but Joyce Danielson from Danielson Flowers is gonna come, they're gonna do some.
Right, I saw
some
that. Oh, that's
flower
great,
arranging,
yeah.
And it is open to all. We have had a few sessions where I've seen, people that don't have dementia just join in, and,
Yeah,
which
I've
is really
seen-
nice
yeah.
because
Yeah.
the entertainment's open
Yeah.
to anyone, the
That's
crafts
nice.
are open to anyone, and it's just a nice, opportunity just to socialize and, regardless of your functioning.
So
Everyone's
when is
welcome.
this scheduled for?
It's the
Second and fourth.
second and
Second.
fourth
Second and fourth
Friday of
Fridays.
the month.
Friday.
And is this publicized?
It's in the
Yes.
newsletter.
Just in
Yeah.
the newsletter?
It's in the newsletter and there's a mailing that goes out to.
But people know that it's open to the public?
Yes,
All right.
well, if they read the publicity. they
That's
know.
right. See, that's the whole problem. because
Well, yeah, I mean,
the
we
information
can't,
is there.
we could go out on the streets and
Yeah.
bat people over the head and make them listen to us.
Anybody-
but-
Well,
Anybody
no, but
who's
for example,
watching this
if
now
you-
should
if
know
you
that they
have-
should.
If Walter, let's say, goes to these interfaith groups, do the churches know that you have this?
They do, and they
Okay.
get the schedule every
Alright.
month, each church does.
But I think part of it too goes, I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the technology piece, that goes into that announcement board that we were talking about to kind of just remind people that are coming in of some of the things that are happening here. I think there's a lot of folks that probably just come in for whatever activity they were coming for and,
Leave.
right,
Something
and may
else.
not be aware that something else is coming that might be of interest to them or whatever. So I think that announcement board will be helpful too, to just remind people of what's going on and again, get people talking about different things that are happening.
So your announcement board, is that going to be a TV screen
We'll
that's
get that-
scrolling?
we'll get back to
Oh, sorry, okay.
You're jumping ahead here.
Sorry.
That's technology.
Are we done with the memory?
Yeah, like I said,
Anyway,
I'm sorry, I kind of
let's
started jumping
kind of
ahead on
move
you
on.
anyway.
I
Well,
have to
there
switch
you
hats now and go on
Okay.
to report on the technology update. As you probably know, the computers out there are not very usable right now. First of all, it's all cluttered. I mean, is the organ moving anytime soon?
I don't know, I
I
know
thought the
the,
organ was scheduled to be moved or given away or.
yeah, I believe the last update we heard was that particular type of organ was discontinued in 1972. So the likelihood that organ is older than me is probably pretty high. So the ability to have someone maintain it properly and service it properly is probably not very high either. So last I knew, it was still up in the air as far as removing it. I know Louise was hoping that it could be repaired, but it might be one of those situations where if we truly feel we should have an organ here, it might be easier just to remove that one and just get one that's newer, that's a model that's still in service that can be maintained better, and then determine where we would put it. Because that one is quite large, quite heavy, it's not mobile the way the piano is. So again, the building, I'm jumping ahead again, but the Building Oversight Committee is meeting later this month, and I know that's one of the things they're hoping to finally make a decision on.
So as far as those computers go, John Covey is getting some new staff. I think he's got 2 new people on his staff. And the plan is that in the near future, he's going to let me work with one of his IT people to come here, evaluate those 4 computers, and see how we can make it usable. Right now, the virus program that's there is, the subscription has expired. And there are other things wrong with it. You try to connect it to the internet and it doesn't work. The software probably needs to be updated. So one of John's guys is going to be working with me, and then hopefully in the not too distant future, and update, maybe we can get it to the point where we can actually put that senior interface thing that I showed you on that and get people using it. That's the plan. Meanwhile, we have in our budget money for the new computers, right? It's on budget for this that we're going to be presenting. So that's where we are with the new computers. In addition, we have a new facilities manager, and Sharon met with him. And the thing is, we're back to square one. As far as getting the TV, getting the message board, getting the new speakers, the projector, all of that that Bob Cox and I talked about last year is now being reset to 0. So we're back at square one.
Because of a new person?
I'm sorry?
Just because there's a new person?
The new person feels that it's better to start over.
Even
Rather
with the
than-
sound system too?
Well, to get somebody who knows what they're doing to come in here, evaluate our needs, and come up with a budget as to what we're going to do. You want to, talk about that?
Yes, so Keith Baldinger is the new,
Facilities?
yes, his title is Public Buildings Division Manager, and he actually sent a little report, for me to review today. So I'll just read that part, for now, and then I can save the rest for the building oversight stuff. But as far as the technology piece for the audiovisual system, what he reported yesterday is I have requested quotes from 3 vendors for the AV system in the main hall. This will include a ceiling-mounted projector, an 85-inch wall-mounted TV monitor, wall-mounted controls, wireless microphones, a new amplifier, and the installation and training on the equipment. I'm currently waiting on 2 of the vendor quotes. I'm hoping to have the project completed by the end of February if all goes well.
The project means just the ports, or the whole thing?
Well, we'll wait and see.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's been reset to 0 then.
See, when I say it's been reset to 0, I meant that whatever that's done by the last, Mr. Cox and other people, we came up, we had a disc one afternoon, Sharon and I and Bob Cox and somebody from the high school, and we thought we had a design in place, and we thought things are going to be ordered. So that is being reset, but from what you're saying, it appears as though the substance of what we agreed to is still there. So he's not completely reset to 0. We're just going to reinitiate the purchase orders to buy these things, to install it, and so on and so forth.
So what's the 85-inch screen for?
Well, the idea is to have a message board
All right.
and probably have something in the senior, inside the dining area also. This is something that we talked about.
85-inch?
Well, it's one of the big ones,
85-inch, I mean, you could be standing across the street to see it.
Well, that was the thought, was that if you were walking, down the corridor or whatever, that you'd be able to look in. It'd also be helpful if something was going on that side in conjunction with something going on side B, that if a presentation was being given and there was an AV component, it could be done on that side. So it gives us more flexibility, because right now, anything with AV that needs AV materials, because of the way our schedules are in the building, we usually only have everything inside B because it's got the screen.
Okay.
Or we do it in here if it's a smaller group and project onto the whiteboard. So this would give us it wouldn't tie up side B if we could use that screen. So that would be something, again, to give us more flexibility with programming too.
Would this new sound system allow an announcement to be made from the office that could be heard throughout the building?
No, we had talked about that. That was in that original quote.
Right.
But this doesn't have that installed throughout. But that might come under the building security
Well, we're gonna
stuff,
talk about
which
that.
we'll talk
Oh,
about that
okay.
too. So the answer is no, but there's a but. We have.
But it would be involved in the sound system somehow, it'd have to be,
Hang on, let's.
oh, all right, all right.
Well, see, we talked about the technology, but the second item there is security issues. So here's an update on the security issues. I don't know how many, probably most of you, because it's on distribution to just about everyone, the Shrewsbury High School Journal. Do you get that? Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Well, the Shrewsbury High School Journal had an article about security written by Mr. Stephen Rocco. Well, it turns out Mr. Stephen Rocco we have a new department, a town department called, what is it called?
I'm gonna try
Emergency preparedness or emergency response or something like that.
Mhm.
And he's the head of that department. So I wrote him an email and invited him to come talk to us. Because I wrote what we did was we've got 5 entrances. Only the first one is being monitored visually. The rest of them, anybody can walk in. And if we're having farmers market here, all kinds of people walk in here. So I think that we have we need to have a security plan in place. So I wrote to him my concerns, and he replied. He actually said he went and spoke to the police department about our security concerns. He said, and I said, would you be willing to come and talk to us and evaluate? And he said he would.
Oh,
So Sharon is going to make this official and formal, and he's going to be hopefully coming to our next board meeting.
Oh, great.
And I'd like him to come and hopefully walk around the building and take a look at what I'm talking about.
Right.
So one of the things he might recommend is your speaker system
Yeah,
that you
okay.
want.
Yeah.
That's, I'm hoping he will,
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
think we do need that.
Mhm.
A speaker system that's heard throughout the building. Loud enough for some people with hearing problems, like me.
yes.
So yeah, so those two things are kind of related. That's why I
And
didn't
what's
bring-
his name again?
His first name is Stephen,
with a
S-T-E-P-H,
PH.
the old-fashioned way. Rocco, R-O-C-C-O. And last night he responded to my email and said he'd be glad to attend. So we'll see him next week.
And he can explain when he comes how the department has changed, because it's not quite new, but it's different. So we've always had a person in charge of emergency management for the town that would attend the department head meetings and so on. But it was more connected with SEMA. So you know how we have FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management, we have MEMA for the state, and we have SEMA, which is our Shrewsbury Emergency Management. So it was more for responding to disasters, if there was a weather emergency and so on. But in light of, unfortunately, of world events, they really saw a need for that to be more tied into building security, responding to, threats within public buildings and so on. So it seemed like the most logical way for that to start was through the school department because of security concerns and safety concerns with schools. So that was kind of rolled into that emergency position. So I'm sure he'll explain more of how that evolved next month. But yeah, he's
See-
excellent. I think it'll be very good.
See, the thing is, I searched on the web and found that the journal is available online in PDF format, and I can send it out to everyone and tell you what page to go read. But what the things that they did was to have a lot of small discussion groups between parents and students and emergency management. They had different groups come up with different ideas. And for instance, we need to have our group leaders, the people who lead the different projects, trained in what to do in case there's an emergency, how to shelter in place, how to secure the area, all that kind of stuff. These people need to be trained, otherwise they will not know what to do. And that's where your PA system comes in, that somebody can make an announcement that yes, we have, something that needs to be aware of, something is happening. And so that's all, I think, the kind of things that, but if you want to prepare for the meeting, for his speech next week, for his visit next week, I'd be glad to send it out to anyone who wants it.
That'd be good.
I'd like it.
PDF file?
Yes.
Yes,
I'll send it to you as PDF,
thank you.
except for you, I'll have to make a hard copy.
I'm special.
But see me after the meeting, I can give you mine. Any other discussion on technology or computers or anything like that? The coffee machine, we talk about coffee machine every week as though.
Hopefully everybody's using it.
As far as I know, the coffee machine is working well.
Yeah, and now
I think we should take it off of this.
we also have,
Overcome by
for the
that.
season, we have hot chocolate pods, we have hot cider, so feel free
Oh,
to
beautiful.
put, or bring your own pod if you'd like to, and right
Is it
now,
still free?
yep, we're still just trying suggested donation, whatever people wanna do, and just see how that works, and so far it's working well, nobody's running off with all the creamers or all the sugars or all the pods. Thank goodness, because we've had strange things happen in the restrooms with people taking air fresheners and toilet paper, and so no, that continues to work well. I do have a quick little update on signage from Keith that I might as well read now before we jump down to building oversight, but because I did have a few things that I was just curious to get your input while we're here. So Keith had said I need to submit to him what we want the signs to say for each of the rooms. And he says, and I will have the work started on the signs. My plan is to bring the signs to Aspet Valley Regional Technical High School's painting and decorating program and have them paint and letter the signs. Then I hope to have the students install them for a community service project. If they are unable to, our in-house staff will take care of this. So I made a list of, the room signs of where we would want them designated. And the two things that I was like, well, there's a few different ways we could do this, and I'm just, again, curious what your input will be, and we can get it from the Building Oversight Committee too. But I feel for the sign, the side A signage, the kitchen sign should hopefully be featured under that too, so it would say side A and kitchen, so that, if we said, oh, go down into, down there, and then if you go through the main hall, you'll see the kitchen. I think if we can say, you'll see the sign that says kitchen, go into that room, so I think that would make sense. And then as far as,
With an arrow, if the kitchen and an arrow.
yeah,
pointing.
that's a good idea. Yeah, to see if we could do an arrow, yeah, I like that. And then for the office, we need to have a sign that says Veteran Services in addition to the office sign. But then I was like, well, what exactly do we want the office sign to say? Do we want it to say COA offices, Council on Aging offices, just administrative offices? Or, then I started thinking, well, geez, how do we actually want it to be worded? So if they can get Council on Aging office to fit, I think that would probably be ideal, seeing that's the formal name of our department.
But don't we have COA on the outside, Council on Aging?
But it just says COA. It just says, if my memory, I could dart out and check, but I think it just says COA offices. I don't think it spells out Council on Aging.
Then do we need to specify inside and again COA? Can't it just be administrative office?
That's the same thing I wondered, so I don't know. I'm curious what everybody thinks.
See, from my perspective, the signage goes with the issue of greeters. Because the greeters, well, first of all, I think you can't just appoint somebody to be a greeter. Greeters have to get trained. Not only to be friendly and inviting and welcoming, they have to know what's what and what's where. In the old days, department stores used to have a thing called a walker, a floor walker, and he would know, you know, go to this building, oh, you want to find that, go down second floor on your right, you know. There's somebody who knew that, who knew what was going on. So a greeter not only has to be friendly, he'd be able to direct people to where to go.
Also to know the programs of the day.
Yes, that'll hopefully be on the, that's one of the reasons for having that large screen thing. They'll show you currently, which again brings your technology person, because the technology person has to be comfortable with updating that and keeping that current, because there's nothing worse than than a bulletin board that's out of date. So all these issues are kind of interrelated, tied together. So I think we have seen a little bit of movement in all of them, but not enough, or incrementally. We're making progress. Anybody has any other comments? If not, we can move on. Friends, anybody report from Friends?
I know they met yesterday, and I know Dr. Claremont is really hoping for increased participation from, so spread the word if there's anyone that you think would be a good foot on the Friends or on the Friends board. They are really hoping to expand and get a very active and vibrant board and Friends group. Calendars are still for sale now that we're in the new year. They've been marked down to $5, so it's a bargain. And the big spring fundraiser that they're working on is a cookbook. So in the February issue of the newsletter, there'll be on the Friends page an actual sheet people can fill out to submit a recipe in the different categories. So hopefully that'll be successful, and we'll see what happens there. But really hoping to get some new folks involved with the Friends. And again, hopefully we can chat about that with our strategic plan too, how the board or how we can help publicize in the newsletter what we can do to help bring more people into the Friends group to get that support from the community.
See, one of the things that I spoke to Dr. C briefly one day, and one of the things I asked him was that at one time he said there was he taught a class called on transitioning to senior to being. In other words, when someone retires at 65, let's say, or 66, they're still physically able to do a lot, and they don't think of themselves as seniors. But you have to gradually transition over to a new lifestyle almost. And he said he used to teach a class here. And if that is, I think that should be ongoing.
And I think I may have mentioned before, that's something that NISC has actually, the National Institute of Senior Centers, has designed a program called Aging Mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's an 8 or 10 week workshop. And you actually get a workbook, and there's different little things that cover just kind of the whole gamut of getting older and, like you said, transitioning into that next phase of your life. And again, I think it was very evident in the survey results too that, you know, such a large percentage of people said that they don't identify as a senior, even though they were receiving the survey because they were a senior.
That could also be because there's a certain stigma attached to admitting that you're old. No. I mean, even if you look at AARP magazine, they portray 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds as looking young. And I say, what's wrong with looking old?
Yeah.
After all, we're old. I want to look my age. I don't mind.
Well, I know I was at a doctor's appointment and my doctor gave me a referral and it said, you know, Ms. Yeager is a middle-aged woman, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, middle-aged, what is that? And he goes, well, you are. And I was like, you know, I guess, but I don't know. It does kind of, you know, bristle you a little bit when you just see yourself classified as something.
So yes, we have to come to terms with this, and I think everyone does. And we all need to be trained in transition.
Well, I guess if nobody likes being middle-aged, you know, you can't blame anybody for having an issue with the next phase either. Maybe we just need to rename all of our different life phases. I'm not sure what the answer is.
Anyway, any more on the Friends? Any updates on anything else that we need to know? So the next item is the Building Oversight Committee. You said there was a January 22nd meeting.
Correct.
And you're going to tie in something that you said earlier?
Yeah, so Keith had some additional comments that, like I said, kind of overlap with building oversight issues. So in regard to chairs, he just wanted to let folks know that he ordered 50 new chairs back last week on Thursday, January 3rd. 35 with no arms and 15 with arms. So in the past, that's been our ratio was kind of 1 out of the 4 would have arms for people that like having an armed chair. Shipping is expected to take 2 to 3 weeks, so we should see them before the end of the month. I was able to get them at a cost of $3,121.50.
And
So-
where
A
is the
chair?
money coming out of?
No.
And the money is from
Right now, that's coming out of their budget.
their budget?
So, yes. So again, if we want to get additional, because we are down quite a few, and the number of chairs we have now that are original chairs is quite high. So again, that's something that we may want to continue to leave in the capital budget, or, you know, we'll have to kind of take an inventory once the new chairs arrive, or again, ask the Friends to pay or use some of that formula difference toward it. So again, we'll still be talking about chairs, even
So
though
are these
the new ones
chairs
are on the
like
way.
these chairs?
Correct, the stackable ones.
Okay.
And so although they've been very sturdy and they've held up very well, unfortunately when they do go, they really can't be repaired. So usually what goes on them is there's 2 beams
Bars.
across, under the seat, and those just kind of break, and they really can't be like welded back on, or the back, you know, so perhaps somebody was leaning back or pushing back, and one of those beams across let go. So that seems to be where they break, and then again, they're really not worth fixing. Didn't really get into tables yet, but we do have some table issues. The springs in our folding tables on wheels, some of them do have issues, and some of the tables should be replaced. And again, those are all originals. I think we've only had 2 that we've replaced since we've been here, because they've, again, thankfully been very sturdy and have held up well.
And as the chairs can't be repaired, can the tables be repaired?
Public Buildings was gonna check, cause they said it could be something simple as
that's what
just
I'm
lubricating the
wondering, yeah.
mechanism or something, and the springs might work better. But if something is stripped or just isn't gonna work, you know, we wanna make sure that those are replaced, and we're not short tables for an event or something.
Does this include the computer tables as well?
No, just.
Excuse me, the computer tables are still open to discussion, because I think that we can get away with using
What
the
we
tables
have?
we have now, but we might want to get new chairs.
Okay.
But that doesn't, it could come from their budget, I don't know if they will. At one time, I was told it would come from their budget, but with the new administration. But I think the main thing is to get the computers working first,
Right.
and get people using it first. But until then, there's no point having a fancy piece of furniture sitting there doing nothing.
And then.
I have a question though.
Sure.
Did you discuss anything about, with Keith, about updating this room? Getting rid of all this stuff that needs to get,
Yes, so that was one thing that, again, the Building Oversight Committee is going to have to talk about too. So we can have this counter removed, but it will take considerable work, which means they won't be sure when they'll be able to get to it. When they determined that when that counter was put in, it had there's a steel beam that went into the framework to build it. So that actually was installed, or what holds it in, I guess you could say, was installed before the wall was. So they would actually have to get that counter off, they would have to kind of demolish this portion of the wall. So it would really be, a big undertaking. So it's something that, they can do and they're willing to do, if we truly want to still go that route. But it will be more involved than they originally thought once they inspected how it is
That being
there.
said, it seems to me that that is really a usable piece of furniture. I mean, the way it is set up right now, like the tax people and the
Yeah.
ancestry people, that may have some use for it.
The photography folks use it too.
Can we just get rid of the upper one rather than the lower one?
I believe they're both installed that way, but I can double check.
Because you need something inside the wall to bolt that thing onto. And then if you take that thing out, you have to do all kinds of repair work. It turns out to be a much bigger project than it looks.
But yeah, I can double check and see if that's true of the top cabinet in addition, or shelf in addition to the bottom one. But like I said, they did find, for that counter, it was much more involved than what they thought. But I'll double check on the shelf. So the other two things that Keith wanted to share was that, again, where the building is going to be 20 years old next year, the boiler is coming up on the radar for them. So the boiler in the building is original and is 20 years old. It is in the capital budget for replacement in FY19, so our current budget. Well, I should say their budget, of $48,000. I am beginning the specifications of procurement for this project, and I have a target completion for summer of this year. So, so the building will be getting a new boiler. And then interior painting, there was interior painting work done earlier this year by a contractor. However, there is more that needs to be done in the building. Over the next couple of months, as time allows, our in-house maintenance staff will work towards completing the rest of the painting in the building. So I think everyone's seen the majority of the painting that's been done, and it came out very nice. So this room still has to be done, the consultation room, the bathroom, hallway, and the offices. But the main parts have all been done, the main hall, the main hallway, the vestibules. So the fresh paint looks nice. So the rest of it should be completed soon. So those were the only other two items that he had given us. But yeah, some nice updates.
Anyway, any questions about the oversight committee? Anybody has, anything related to the facility itself? Any questions? The next item is new business. Now, before we get into policy and procedure review, what policy and procedure are we talking about?
Well, unfortunately, I still haven't had a chance to get that out to you, but the last policy and procedure statement, we used to have it posted up near where I would post the agendas. Basically, it was just a 4-page document.
Is it part of the town's policy and procedure for the way we operate, or is it something else?
No, it's always been something that the Council on Aging Board has done as far as what they would like the policy to be, as far as how the building is used, who it's used by, how people should conduct themselves in the building. And we haven't updated it since 2013. So again, if we were to go for accreditation, that's one of the things that would need to be updated. I think we don't have it spelled out in our strategic plan, but obviously I think it's something we'd want to make sure is done over the course of this next strategic plan, but it's not a very complicated document, and there's not a lot of things that need to be updated. I think it's more just some language issues, and again, building in dementia-friendly language, and specifying, and it ties into that next item, which is the instructor facilitator group leader packet. Because there's a lot there for those folks, that's different from, we refer to it in the policy and procedures, but then we have that separate packet for the facilitation groups, and particularly incorporating some of the things like you're talking about with security. Dr. Claremont has been drafting, just to be helpful. I believe he had filled Louise in on this. He drafted an anti-bullying policy from things he learned in writing his recent column on bullying. Hopefully you've had a chance to peek at that. So that's something I want to get out to everybody too, as something that I would think we would need to incorporate that language into either the policy and procedure and or the instructor facilitator group packet, that we would have that anti-bullying policy in there. So again, not reinventing the wheel, a lot of senior centers have started having an anti-bullying policy. Louise and I, 2 years ago, when we had attended the MCOA conference, we had hoped to attend a workshop on it, and it was actually filled to capacity, and we weren't able to attend. So on the way home from the conference, I actually stopped at the senior center that presented and got the materials from them. And they had basically just adapted it from the school's anti-bullying. When somebody, I think it was on their COA board, was very involved with the schools and had attended something that the schools had been doing on anti-bullying and said, this should be applicable to the senior center, and use some of that language just to adapt it a little bit, and it really helped them. So now a lot of senior centers are doing the same thing. So they've had some issues with, like in senior housing or 55 and older communities, where people might have shared living spaces or community spaces where that seems to be more intense as far as bullying. So some of that language, gets toned down as far as coming into the senior center. But I'll get that out to you too, so you can see what Dr. Claremont has drafted, just so we have a starting place to work from. And when I met with HR, again, I know I'm kind of overlapping on a few different things here about the staff stuff. One of the things that she was saying that we may want to have incorporated into the My Senior Center program, if it's available, that when people scan in, they can just kind of, read an anti-bullying statement and just check that they've read it and that, they've understood it, rather than trying to have every single person that comes into the senior center sign off that they've read our anti-bullying policy.
How about including that in the policy and procedure that you're going to put up on the wall?
Right, yeah, there would be some type of,
Have you run into a problem here?
here and there,
Yes and no, a
yeah,
little bit.
I mean, I haven't seen one, that's why I was asking.
here and there, we've had, different things happen. Sometimes it's just people joking around, and then it can get out of hand, and one person starts getting upset.
Oh, good.
Or even just sometimes it overlaps just with insensitivity. I know, Zoya, you had told me one time about an unfortunate situation where somebody had said something just insensitive. But thankfully you spoke up, and it didn't become a bullying situation, but just kind of bringing awareness to people of comments or statements that might be offensive to others or just insensitive regarding their cognitive issues or their ethnicity or religious beliefs, or so it kind of all ties in together. Nothing horrible, but in that theme of being a welcoming place, we want to make sure that that's not an issue.
Yes,
So-
I don't believe there has been any physical violence, but certainly verbal abuse kind of, or verbal, something like that, would you say, intimidation, that kind of stuff.
From time to time, and both men and women it can happen. I think people think of stereotype men, but sometimes
Oh, no.
women can unfortunately be very catty or
Cruel.
yeah. So unfortunately, it can happen to anybody, and I think one of the things that I found very interesting in a workshop I did attend on bullying in another MCOA meeting is that sometimes you end up seeing very middle schoolish behavior with folks, and there's actually some interesting themes there because sometimes it's all about control. And again, going back to schools, you see middle schoolers exerting control because they've lost, or they're trying to find their way and what they can control and what they can't. And unfortunately, some seniors have lost a lot of control, either health issues or a spouse. They're dealing with life
Vulnerable.
life circumstances that are out of their control, so they end up becoming very controlling over things that are in their control. So, Sasha, you're in my chair. This is the chair I always sit in. Why are you there? And so little things that might normally never seem like a big deal might suddenly just become a pet peeve to somebody, and they could get very irritated. Then you have people that are on different medications that might, or dietary changes that might make them more irritable. And so it's really just like, again, in the schools when you got hormones raging and everything else, you just end up with like this perfect storm of an environment where people might not act the way they normally would. And unfortunately, people can be cruel or hurtful, and they may not intend to be, or this might not be the type of person that they normally are, but regardless, it turns into a situation that is less than ideal and not welcoming.
It's very interesting. I don't know if anyone here, you may not use LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn because I connect with a lot of people that way. And people like to have running commentary. It's amazing. You would think it's Facebook, but it's more Facebook for business in a way. And I'm very interested by the language that's on there now, which is trying to be more, I don't want to say PC, but looking at language. And it's interesting because there was a comment made, and the way that it was phrased, I'm thinking, apparently people have forgotten the golden rule, because if they did, they would just be restating it. It's almost as if we have forgotten it. Again, because it's always that thing that your parents said to you. It was mostly your mother that said, if you can't say something nice about something, about somebody, don't say anything at all. And also, especially when you're in business, don't say anything, period, because you don't know who's standing next to you. And you don't know where you're going to see them the next day. And it could be somebody very important that you just insulted. But that, I realize sometimes it's not that easy to have that thought in your brain all the time. Because it could be embarrassing the next time you're someplace.
I don't know whether lack of hormones and excessive hormones.
Well, I know I've heard it said more than once. In fact, I just had somebody say it to me yesterday, I'm old, I've lost my filter. And it's like, that's, I think part of it too is our filter of what we say and what we don't say. And some people say, the heck with it, I'm just going to tell people what I think. And they do. But then you've got to be willing to deal with that fallout of, whatever it is that someone has said. So
Just tell them that if they are feeling the need to be angry, just turn on Housewives of Atlanta or something, and they could get it all out of their system by watching them all duke it out.
And there is a kind of cultural thing that says that when you age, you kind of earn the right to speak your mind and not be concerned about things. It's not a good way of looking at things.
I think we've beat that subject to death. I know that you all want to discuss more about that, but I think we need to stop now.
You're going to bully us into stopping.
Now, Sharon, you were going to talk about staff interviews?
yes, so Christina Anderson, our new HR coordinator, as I said, she has put out a van driver post, and we've gotten quite a few applicants, as well as for a part-time position. So that's been posted. The deadline was Friday, and we got a ton of applications. So she's been going through and kind of categorizing them into 3 categories. One where the person doesn't seem to be a good fit. One where, we may want to give them a closer look, and then one where these are folks that we'd like to bring in an interview. But we're trying to see if we can narrow that down further, because there was over 100 applicants for a part-time position. So she's since posted the full-time position yesterday, and I'm sure we'll have even more applicants for that. but yet there were so many good folks that applied for the part-time position. As we interview, we may find if the person's willing to work full-time, we may have someone from that pool. So we'll see. I think we'll be in a good position. So I'm not sure what the deadline to apply for the full-time position will be. I'll have to check with Christina, but so all of that is all happening and coming to fruition. So hopefully we'll have the interviews for the van driver and the part-time person all completed by the end of the month, and we'll have somebody in mind, and then the full-time person to follow. So by the next board meeting, I should have a significant update and maybe introducing new folks to you. We'll see.
That'd be good.
All right, so is there anything else that you want to discuss, or are you ready to quit? Anybody got anything else? No more about bullying though. But, all right, somebody wants to propose the meeting be adjourned?
I
So-
propose the meeting to be adjourned.
I'll second it.